would you like a bit of seasoning to go with your daily rumors? Because today's video probably needs to be taken with a grain of salt. I'll just say that right off the bat. So yesterday we did make another video talking about Canadiens defenseman Arber Xhekaj and how he got sent down to the AHL. We discussed the immediate reactions to it. We talked about how some people could be concerned as to why this was going down, and of course, we explained why it actually happened the way it did. Went over the perspectives, went over why this could be beneficial, went over some of the concerns behind it as well. But at the end of the day, it was a pretty alright and reasonable video. Reasonable conclusion, reasonable thought process. I felt everybody in the comments had some pretty reasonable thoughts as well. It's all said and done, right? Arber Xhekaj, Montreal Canadiens defenseman, is now in Laval. We're just going to wait a little bit to see how he plays over there, and if he improves, he'll find himself back onto the Canadiens, the regular team, maybe after some other defenseman gets some more playing time and ends up getting traded away. Habs have a logjam on defense. Arber Xhekaj is definitely one of the guys they want to keep around, so it's just a matter of time before he's back in a Canadian sweater, right? Well, we didn't talk about this specific aspect of the Arber Xhekaj conversation in yesterday's video because I didn't see it until after the video was uploaded, so yeah, that's my bad. And also, it's a very loosey-goosey, kind of speculative kind of thing, so I didn't want to toss it in there with all the other rational discussions we were having about Arber Xhekaj. Today we are going over what Georges Laraque went out there and said on BPM Sports Radio. Now, if you don't know Georges Laraque, of course, everybody kind of is familiar. He is a Montreal, Quebec guy. He played for the Montreal Canadiens towards the end of his NHL career. After being a Penguin, he was a Coyote. He was mostly an Oiler, though. So Georges Laraque is definitely a guy who has made his rounds around the hockey world. And he has been a frequent collaborator on Montreal Sports Talk Radio. Yesterday, after the Arber Xhekaj news came out, you had yourselves Georges Laraque saying on air a very interesting story as to what might have happened to lead to this decision. The link to the BPM Sports audio is going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and listen to this, but if we take a look at the actual post itself and read what Habs Fan TV Sports went out there and said, they quote-tweeted the Georges Laraque audio and said this. Interesting story from Laraque. He says that Marty St apparently ripped into Arber Xhekaj after a loss for being too aggressive, and since then, Xhekaj has changed his game out of fear of being left out. Laraque then says he wouldn't be surprised if Xhekaj doesn't finish the year in Montreal. Now pause, let's go out there and break this down into a few thoughts before really diving into what this means and if it's actually true. The idea that's being tossed around here is that one day, after the Canadiens ended up losing a game, Marty St ripped into Xhekaj. St. Louis was angry. He was yelling at the guy. At least, that's the type of language that is implied based off of how the audio hit is spelled out. And apparently, Arber Xhekaj kind of let the foot off the gas pedal a little bit in terms of his aggressiveness in order to acquiesce to what it is that Marty St. was apparently yelling at him for. Hey, you're too aggressive, you cost us the game, maybe something like that, and Xhekaj, as a result, ends up being a little bit less aggressive and becomes a little bit more passive in response to that talking to. Now, the idea here is that because Arber Xhekaj ended up going through this, it's kind of why he got sent down. I mean, there may be some truth to that. I don't know. There were already some Canadiens fans in yesterday's video saying that, yeah, it has been pretty noticeable, the decline or the lack of effectiveness that Arber Xhekaj has displayed the past few weeks compared to, let's just say, last season when he was getting everybody in the Toronto and Ottawa fan bases to hate on him. Like, those were some crazy days, if you remember from last year. He had everybody on his back. It was nuts. But if Arber Xhekaj was told directly in an angry way by Marty St. that he was too aggressive, then okay, I could understand why he would want to take the foot off the gas pedal. We'll get into a little bit more as to whether or not that's actually believable as the video goes on, but the second idea that is brought up by Georges Laraque is that he wouldn't be surprised if Xhekaj doesn't finish the year in Montreal. Now, I don't know whether he's referring to within the Montreal Canadiens team themselves or within the organization, because right now he's not in the Montreal Canadiens system. Like, he's in Laval. They're not the same. So, if Larocque is implying that Xhekaj is going to get traded straight up, like the way he plays is apparently so sour in the eyes of Canadiens management that he doesn't finish the year as a member of the Montreal Canadiens organization, he gets traded somewhere else, honestly, I don't have an easy time buying that, especially with all the press the Canadiens have already given to the fact that they drafted Arber's brother, Florian Xhekaj. There was always a link there was always a conversation to be brought up, and there was always this thing saying, yeah, the Habs have two Xhekaj brothers, these are the Bash Bros, these guys are going to come into the NHL and they're going to dominate together because they're so aggressive, etc., etc. So, like, I don't know. You know, it's happened before where a team has two players from the same family only for them to end up trading one of them away. Like, we all know what happened with the Stalls. We all know what happened with literally Kirby Dach earlier when he got sent over to Montreal. They have Colton Dach in their system too, the Chicago Blackhawks do. So they traded Kirby whilst having the brother under the payroll, or at least within their organization. So the idea of trading Xhekaj away doesn't really seem like something I think the Canadiens would want to explore, especially considering they have his younger brother, but having a brother doesn't necessarily guarantee that your spot within an organization is secure. So just tossing that idea out there. Now, to end off this video, what I also wanted to do was go over some of the comments made on the Habs subreddit in regards to this George Larocque story, because there are a lot of Canadiens fans that go out there and immediately doubt what it is that Larocque says, so I wanted to shine a light on these perspectives as well. In particular, they're going out there and talking about, hey, is it really believable that Martin St. Louis was apparently super angry at Xhekaj and yelled at him to the point that Xhekaj ended up stopping his aggressiveness? Let's go over onto the post made by Revolutionary Rise 455 and read what some Canadiens fans have to say. The first thread actually says this: I love Larocque, but I don't really trust anything he says. A reply says, I don't love him and I don't really trust anything he says. A third reply says, I'm indifferent about him, but I don't really trust anything he says. Fourth reply says, I have no idea who he is, and I don't really trust anything he says. They're joking around here, but still. Another comment thread goes out there and directly contradicts this too. LOL at acting like Habs Fan TV is a news source. Everyone knows not to take George Larocque too seriously, and it goes against everything Martin St. Louis has been saying anyways. The reply here explains, Yup, Martin St. Louis has always said he's never been in that position where he needs to be aggressive, so he can't judge or say anything about it. Maybe he said something about the timing and the necessity of some aggressive moves, but nothing like it's implied here, where he angrily might have yelled at Xhekaj and caused the guy to stop playing aggressively. You then have Spicy Pickle 6, who actually gives the benefit of the doubt. Even if it is true, I wouldn't blame Marty for doing it. I love Xhekaj, but he spends almost as much time in the box as on the ice. Reddit again then replies saying, yeah, stupid penalties cost games, and all the fights in the world aren't better for the team morale than winning. Then you have some commenters going out there and talking about the idea of a trade. It doesn't even make sense to trade him. He's not worth more than Zadorov, and Arber is a fan favorite. Now, we know Nikita Zadorov was traded to the Vancouver Canucks for a 5th and a 3rd round pick, so whether or not you could debate if Arber is worth more or less, that is your prerogative. Romanov, though. This guy was also a fan favorite too, and we traded him because of our upcoming rookie defenseman, and we needed a player like Dach. Arber is not worth a 13th overall pick though. If a team offered that, he would already be gone. And finally, there is one more reply that tries to rationalize the sentiment that is shared in the tweet. Not sure if I buy the tone of this commentary. But if Martin St. Louis told Xhekaj to take fewer penalties and Xhekaj changed his game in response, that does seem pretty reasonable. So at the end of the day, when it comes to the idea of Martin St. Louis flaming the player that is Arber Xhekaj, getting pissed off at the guy, yelling at him, ripping into him as it's indicated in the audio, I don't necessarily know if it's 100% like believable, especially in the way that it's phrased, but of course you are free to go out there and believe what it is that you want. It's just when it comes to Montreal Canadiens hockey, I mean, Martin St. Louis has been so careful in the way that he tries to coach these guys and the habits he wants to instill within them, the beliefs that he wants these players to approach the game with. So to hear something like this that completely contradicts that style, I don't know if I really buy it, but of course, I mean, George Larocque is no random bum on the street. He is a player, former player who is in the media sphere and who does probably have sources that know things, so I don't know. It's up to you to believe what it is that you want to believe, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the entire Martin St. Louis Arber Xhekaj situation, if you even want to call it that. Watch the video yesterday if you wanted to see even more opinions about Xhekaj and his play. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.